Welcome to today's webinar titled Assessing Effectiveness. Do your program activities make a difference? My name is Greg Nagy, and I am the Technology Services Representative from The Ohio State University who provides technical support for the STEM Equity Pipeline Project. Before we start the presentation, I would like to go over some housekeeping items for this webinar. This webinar is scheduled to last roughly 1 hour and is being recorded in order to review this presentation in its entirety later. The recorded webinar will be available by the end of the week on the www.stemequitypipeline.org website. As you've already found out, you will be watching the presenters present slides through the WebEx interface while listening to them talk over the phone. If you cannot get the WebEx software to work today, you can download today's slides from the What's New section of the stemequitypipeline.org website and follow along using your phone. All the attendees' phones have been automatically muted. The presenters will answer questions after the presentation. However, we can take questions at any time. There are two ways we will take questions. For the first way, at any time during the presentation and during the Q&A, you may submit a question by typing it in the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your WebEx screen. I will read these questions to the presenters at the end of the presentation. The second way we will take questions is by speaking over the phone. If you wish to ask a question, please click the raise hand icon at the bottom of the participants panel. I will unmute your phone and ask you by name to ask your question. When you are finished, I will then mute your phone again. I would like to start the webinar by introducing Mimi Lufkin, CEO, National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity Education Foundation and STEM Equity Pipeline Project Director. Mimi?
Hi, this is Mimi Lufkin. I'm sorry, I just had my secretary come in and tell me that there are some people who've been calling our office who haven't been able to get on the webinar. So, Greg, I will have her let them contact you via email. Is that the best way to do that?
Sure, I've actually started doing a little bit of that, so yeah, go right ahead.
Have them contact Greg via email. Nagy. Okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. For those of you, the 56 or 8 of you who are on the webinar, I'm glad that you're here. We're really looking forward to this presentation today. I'm Mimi Lufkin, the Chief Executive Officer of the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity, and it's a pleasure for me to be here with you. I want to just quickly give you some information about the STEM Equity Pipeline project and of course, introduce our speaker. But first of all, the STEM Equity Pipeline Project is a project of the National Alliance for Partnerships in Equity Education Foundation. It's funded by the National Science Foundation through their Human Resources Directorate. There's a Gender in Science and Engineering program, and this is an extension services grant. What that means basically is that we're providing services to individuals who conduct professional development with teachers via a state team process, and that's how we're really rolling out the use of these experts. The goals of the project is to build the capacity of the formal education community around gender equity and STEM, to institutionalize the implemented strategies by connecting these outcomes to existing accountability systems, and we're in particular working within the career and technical education system and therefore looking at Perkins accountability measures related to the non-traditional training and employment measure. And the third goal is, of course, to broaden the commitment to gender equity in STEM education in general. The methods that we'll be using in implementing this project is by conducting a variety of professional development activities. This webinar is one of those. We will also be doing some teacher training in the states that we're working in. We provide consulting and technical assistance to our state teams. And we have a virtual web-based professional learning community that's at stemequitypipeline.org that Greg mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. And we'll also be developing a best practices handbook from the lessons learned from working with the state teams. If you go to the stemequitypipeline.org website, that's really the place where you can find lots more detailed information. So how can you get involved? If you're from California, Oklahoma, Missouri, Wisconsin, or Illinois, if you go to the STEM Equity Pipeline website, you can identify there the state contact and communicate with them directly about participating in state-level activities as well as being on a state team. If you're from another state in this country and want to participate, we just released an application for the next 2 states to be selected. The application is due July 18th, and that information is also available on the virtual learning community, and you can access it. Again, the website is www.stemequitypipeline.org. So let me introduce our presenter. Tricia Berry is the director of the Women in Engineering program at the University of Texas in Austin. In this position, she's responsible for leading the efforts on recruitment and retention of women in the College of Engineering, so she's well-versed in the subject today of assessing the effectiveness of programs. She'll be speaking specifically about a project called Assessing Women and Men in Engineering that she's been involved in through a grant with the National Science Foundation. But I want you also to know that she came to the college in July of 1999 after 6 years at the Dow Chemical Company, where she worked as a process engineer and then as a product development engineer. So she knows both sides of the story. And I, at this point, would like to just pass it on to Tricia, and Tricia, take it away.
Thank you, Mimi. I'm thrilled to be here and to be able to share with you some of the insights that I've gained by participating in the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering project, as Mimi mentioned. The AW project really is one that we've incorporated completely through my Women in Engineering program, so I'm happy to hopefully give you some tips and some insights that will help you in your programs. So what I'd like to do first is just to get a little bit of a sense of who we have here on the phone call. So we're going to do a little poll to find out if you are an assessment guru. And by no means am I an assessment guru. By the definitions that hopefully will be showing up here shortly, there's your poll on the right. If you're absolutely an assessment guru, then I would, in my definition, say that you're trained in assessment theory and application. You have all the background on assessment of how to develop those tools and then how to use them. I would say that I'm sort of an assessment guru. I implement assessments, I know how to use assessments, and can incorporate those into my program and make sense of them once I have them. Are you trying to do assessments? You do some, but you want to learn more. Or not yet, and that's why you're really here on the call, to learn a little bit more. So pick one of those to let us know, are you an assessment guru, and hit that submit button down at the bottom, and we'll give you a couple more seconds, and then we'll show the results to see who we've got here on the phone call. So when it hits 1 minute, we'll have the full results show up here.
You can see them all filling it in quickly.
Good deal.
All right, I'm going to close it and show it right now.
Thank you. All right. Is it showing it yet, Greg?
It's waiting to close it. Yeah.
That's fine. Well, while that's working, let me tell you a little bit about what I want to do today. I want to provide you all some background information on the Assessing Men and Women in Engineering project. And great, we have lots of you that are trying to do something or that don't know what to do yet, so great. And hopefully for those of you that are gurus, I don't say anything that's incorrect along the way. Thanks. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to talk, like I said, a little bit about the AW project and give you some of the background. I'm going to share a little bit of what is assessment so we can have some common definitions, and then give you my justifications for assessment, why I feel that it's important and we do it throughout our Women in Engineering program, give you my 6 steps to assess and evaluate, and then walk you through a real-world example. And I think that may be of most benefit to you to see how we actually take these AW tools and this assessment and put it into practice. And then finally wrap up with some insights that I've gained and some words of wisdom to leave you with. So what is AW? AW was a National Science Foundation funded project to develop exportable assessment tools and methods, and that will make more sense as I go through a couple more slides. You can see on here the initial institutions that were involved in the testing and validation of the instruments, and the co-PIs on the original grant were Barbara Bogue and Rose Mara. AWE has most recently partnered with the Society of Women Engineers, and you'll see their logo there at the bottom, as well as the National Growth Collaborative Project to really flesh out the pre-college instruments that are part of AWE. And once again, you'll see more of that here in a minute. You'll also see at the bottom right that AWE logo on a number of the slides that I've actually taken from other AWE presentations. So I wanted to make sure that I gave the AWE project credit on many of these pieces that I'll be sharing with you today. So the AWE goals, there's 3 primary goals that center around the creation of tools to assess pre-college and undergraduate retention activities, and really around helping women in engineering science programs and others doing pre-college and retention activities with building their own capacity, with helping them understand what are they doing and how can they do it better. Also is really conceived to address some of the real-world challenges that many of us face in administering our programs for pre-college students and for current engineering students. Many of us lack time, money, expertise to really develop and conduct good assessments. We grab a survey that we did last year by some other program, we change the title and the name and the date at the top, have the kids fill it out in the program, throw those results into a spreadsheet. Maybe we get that far. Maybe they just still sit in the stack somewhere of surveys that have been filled out. And then maybe next year when we're about ready to do the program again, we pull that out, we look at it and we say, oh, maybe we should do this time. In addition, oftentimes we're really not even rewarded on what our assessments are and how well we're doing in our programs. Oftentimes, if the program is funded, great, continue it. Or if we had lots of kids participate, great, continue it. If it seemed to run well, everybody had a great time, great, keep doing it. But are we really accomplishing our goals and meeting our objectives? That's where assessment can come in and help, and that's where AWE can come in and help. So aweonline.org is where you can find all the information about AWE. Registration is free. They do require registration, so we can collect that information on who is using the tool. And you can see the click here to register on this screenshot of the website. So what's on the AWE online website? What are part of these AWE tools? Well, AWE provides a number of assessment and evaluation instruments for our use, and here is a listing of several of those. There's longitudinal self-efficacy survey. There are various surveys for undergraduate engineering student initiatives, and then a number of pre-college instruments. And each of these instruments is very detailed out on the AWE website, as you'll see on the next slide. This is an example of what you would find if you went into the AWE website as a registered user and went to one of the survey instruments that you were interested in using. This is an example of the undergraduate engineering mentor surveys. And on here, there's included a pre-survey aimed at assessing your student mentors prior to their mentoring activities, and then a post-survey aimed at assessing them at the conclusion of the activity. So to give you an example, I have peer mentors that mentor first-year engineering women. I would give that pre-survey to my peer mentors at the very beginning of the fall semester, and then I'd give them the post-survey at the very end of the spring semester because they mentor these students all year long. In addition to reproducible instruments that we can pull off of this website and use, the website also includes information on how to modify the instruments so that if we need to modify them to meet our program goals, we can, when it's best to administer them, and then how to use those results. So lots of very useful practical information for us as practitioners. So here's some of the new stuff within the pre-college arena. As I mentioned, that in partnership with the Society of Women Engineers and the National Growth Collaborative Project, the AWE project really is expanding and supplementing the pre-college instruments on their website. Their core pre-college instruments include a pre-instrument, pre-survey, an immediate post, which you would give right at the immediate end of a program, and then a 3- and a 6-month post-survey that you would actually go out and survey these students at a later date. There are also new offerings that include some discipline-specific instruments, and you can see on the slide mentioned engineering, science, and computer versions now. There are also surveys at collecting core information, some demographic information, things like that. And then some optional question modules. So based on what your objectives and goals are, you can actually take some of these validated and tested questions and plug them right in if they're appropriate for your program. There's also an outreach activity observation form and an implementation guide to help you with pre-college assessment as well. So what are some of the capacity building tools of AWE? This is another big piece of what the AWE project was all about. It provides a great knowledge base for those of us who are interested in learning more about assessment, who aren't necessarily trained and schooled in assessment, and also those factors that are being measured in these AWE instruments. There are research overviews, there are annotated bibliography, and all of those provide kind of tips and hints and places to look for further learning. And this just shows one example of a literature overview that was on mentoring and women in engineering. And you can see they showed lots of references for you if you want to go and read more. So what is assessment? It really starts with objectives, and it allows for us to determine through the analysis of the data that we've collected whether or not we have met objectives. Assessment really has those program objectives at its core. But it also includes the creation or the use of valid and reliable instruments to help us collect the data to be used in ensuring that our activities do further our mission and our goals. This is a slide that always throws me a little bit because jumping into the assessment world, you hear formative and summative assessment a lot. And I finally found a definition for me that makes sense. Formative assessment is for learning. So I can remember that because they both start with F-O-R. So formative assessment is really focused on the process of the initiative, and we have those review points along the way to see where we are and how we're progressing and if we need to make some modifications along the way. The summative assessment is of learning. It's at the end. It's focused on those objectives themselves, and did we actually accomplish what we wanted to accomplish throughout the program? Did that learning we want to have happen actually happen? So doesn't everyone do assessment? Well, we know that many do, but that how piece really varies widely. And oftentimes that assessment is really only on the formative side. How are we doing? How can we improve overall? But it really lacks that connection back to the objectives, to the learning that actually occurred or didn't occur in the program. And as I mentioned previously, oftentimes we just modify those surveys as we head out the door to an event, we grab somebody else's survey and we modify it quickly. And we don't really take the time or even have the time nor the skills to be able to create an effective assessment tool. We also oftentimes measure that enjoyment factor. How fun was this? Instead of really collecting data to measure that true effectiveness, to measure whether we are having a difference in the learning of the participants. So let's do another poll. Let's see what's on your post-survey. Think about one of the programs where you have a post-survey or you don't. And on the right, you'll actually be able to select a number of things here. So what's on your post-survey? And be sure once you've selected your 1, 2, 3, or 4 items, hit that submit button at the bottom. We'll give you about a minute to be able to click in there and do that and give everybody time. I will tell you that I have had all of these on my assessments in the past. I keep most of those on there now. I don't ask anymore about the food. And my reason is not that I don't care whether they like the food or not, but no matter what they say about the food, my budget, my availability of places to order from in the university setting limits where I can get the food. So regardless of whether they loved it or hated it, and oftentimes on a survey question like that, you get some that loved it, some that hated it, some that said, fine, and there's not really anything you can do with that. So if there's nothing I'm going to do with that piece of data, why am I wasting their energy to actually fill it out? Sometimes it's good to ask those questions to let them vent. And that, I think, is a valid reason to have it on the survey. If you need to just give them a place to be able to share their thoughts and rant a little bit about the food or the location or something else, having a place for that is fine as well. Great. So see, everybody's asking lots of different things, and that's fine. That formative piece that we have on our assessments are definitely valid and useful. Okay, so what can happen if we get in this sort of closed feedback loop? And this we get into when we only measure that fun factor or the enjoyment factor on our surveys. We call these our happy face surveys. So say, for example, we asked, did you enjoy the activity or the food or whatever on our happy face survey? And the students, they answer, yes, but I would have liked this better, or if it's a presentation, the talks were pretty boring. I like action. So we improve it, the delivery for next time. And then we go and we ask them again, did you enjoy this? And they say, oh, well, this time there was too much activity. I really want more talking. And around and around and around we go. They don't really let us know by asking those types of questions whether the students actually learned something, and tell us really where we can improve the content or delivery of our programs. And I'll share you one of my favorite examples on this. In our Women in Engineering program, we have a kickoff the very first night of the fall semester for all first-year engineering women. They're all invited to come and connect with peer mentors. We give a little program on what our office is all about, how to connect to resources on campus, and so on. We ask the students on a pre-survey registration form about their confidence in completing a degree in engineering. And this is one of the survey questions from one of the AWE instruments. We asked the exact same question on our post-survey. A few years ago, when we started asking these questions, we found that the participants' confidence after our event on the first night of classes was way, way, way lower than what they showed on the pre-survey. So, of course, our first thought was, oh, my gosh, in this event we are driving students out of engineering. This is terrible. This is not what we want to have happen. Now, after we take a step back, we realize, well, they've just had their first day of engineering classes. So they've been slammed with physics and chemistry and math, and sure, their confidence is diminished a bit. But we did not, in our program, do anything to build it back up after that day of classes. So what we have done since is modify our event content. We've modified the delivery. We've modified the training that we give to our peer mentors and provided them some different guidance on what to talk about during the event. And now our post-survey results are equal to or even slightly better than that of our pre-survey responses. So what I like to say now is that we've effectively countered any damage that's been inflicted on that first day of college. But we couldn't have gotten to that point if we just continued with our did you have fun questions. So what's some justification for assessment? I've kind of talked through, I think, some of these as we've gone along, but there are a number of reasons. It allows us to identify those opportunities for improvement or expansion. It allows us to compare programs and determine if one program works better than another, or if someone else's program works better than ours, or vice versa, so that we can share. It allows us to allocate our resources better once we learn where things are working and where they are not. It also allows us to elevate our program value. If we can share real numbers and real data, we can show that our program is important and that we're paying attention to those results and we're seeking ways to be more effective or more productive or more mindful of resource allocation or whatever the case may be. It also definitely allows us to justify programs and the funding of such programs to administrators, to funders, to potential collaborators, and so on. And I think one of the reasons people oftentimes are kind of hesitant to assess programs is because they're afraid of what those results may be. But I would challenge you to say that programs are definitely stronger when you're able to assess. And, you know, did your program fail if you don't assess? Absolutely not. But it definitely can make your program, make your initiatives, and make your impact much greater. So here are Tricia's 6 steps to assess and evaluate. These are the 6 steps that my staff and I use to assess all of our programs and to evaluate them. I'm going to use these to walk through a real-world example, which I think will really help you see these 6 steps in action. The example I'm going to use is our Women in Engineering program's first-year interest groups. And the FIGs, we run 4 of them in our office, and FIGs are a university-wide program where up to about 25 students are grouped by some sort of factor. We choose major within our program. They take a weekly seminar with one of our staff as a facilitator, and then a student mentor who's a second through fourth or fifth year undergraduate student. They also take, in addition to the weekly seminar with us, 1, 2, 3 other classes together so that they can be this cohort of students going from class to class. So when we take our WEP FIGs and we look at step 1 to determine the fit with the mission, what I've shown here is our Women in Engineering program mission, to increase the overall percentage of women in the Cockrell School of Engineering at UT Austin. We strive to educate, inspire, and empower. And so what we do is say, does our WEP FIG program educate, inspire, and empower women? And in our case, yes, it does. We inspire them by providing role models of industry women and faculty, as well as share with them glimpses of what they may do with that degree in their major. We empower them to benefit society by providing them with resources and tools to succeed in the classroom and in their lives. And back up to that first one, we educate them about their major and about those opportunities. And then we revisit this each year to make sure that we're still in alignment with our mission, with what we're doing within this program. The second step is to set goals. And the goals are really those bigger picture items. We don't have to get specific and measurable in goals like we do the objectives, which is step 3. So our first goal within our program and within any initiative that we do is to contribute to the overall goal of WEP, to recruit, retain, and graduate women in the Cockrell School of Engineering. If our initiative or our program doesn't do that, then we don't do the initiative or the program. There's no reason to do it if it doesn't tie in with our overall goal. And you can see from the other goals that we have on here that they're fairly broad. And what we do anytime we establish an initiative is we review these goals and we modify them each year to keep them relevant and to keep them in alignment with what's going on with our program, with our college, or with our university. The third step is to define measurable objectives. Some steps to developing objectives include things like conducting a needs assessment to identify some of the issues or problems, benchmarking other programs, referring to relevant research, such as those that I showed you previously for the annotated bibliography or research overviews, and also just drawing upon your own and others' experiences. I know oftentimes when I'm going to write objectives, I have to get on Google and type in objectives and remind myself on what does a good objective look like. And really, if you can remember that they need to be SMART, specific, measurable, action-oriented, relevant, and timely. They need to be those measurable goals that have some sort of action tied to them and some sort of thing that we can measure through our assessment tool. And they also need to be in a support of your overall goals that you've just created in the previous step. So here are some of the measurable objectives from our WEP FIGs. And you can see in here that they include numbers, they are specific, they are things that we can measure. And we have more of these than we do have goals, and that's typical. What we do with our objective creation, however, is we do make sure that each of these maps back to one of the goals, and that every goal that we've created has at least one objective, something that we can measure to make sure that we're advancing towards the achievement of that goal. So step 4 is to develop and modify and implement these assessments, and this is where the AWE tools come in handy. For our FIG program, we use these 4 different kinds of assessments in our program. So I think one of the key things to note is that it's not always a survey. It's not always something that you hand out to students to fill out. Sometimes it's things like retention and graduation data. It's things that we can go and collect without even really having to involve those participants, but it helps us measure the success of the programs that we're doing. One of the things that our program has really implemented and the students have complete buy-in is a registration system for every single initiative, program, event that we have. Students have to pre-register. Now that doesn't mean we shut them out and don't let them in if they don't do that, but it is in their mindset that they are to register for WEP events, and part of that is filling out a survey, and when they show up at the event, they'll have a survey at the end. It's just part of our culture, and the students understand that. And they fill it out, and they understand that we use it and we take their input and their feedback to heart and really do try to improve things along the way. So here's some of the end of semester questions that we ask for our FIG students. And each one of these questions maps to one of those objectives that I had showed you earlier. For example, one of our objectives is that 95% of our FIG students feel part of the engineering community as indicated on end of semester surveys. So this last question here, when we want 95% of our students to feel a part of the engineering community, that last question here on the slide will let us know that, will allow for us to see if we are truly contributing to that in our program. This is another very simple assessment that we do quite often, and this is a little postcard size or whatever size you want to make it, handout that we'll do immediately following a session to get some immediate feedback instead of waiting till the end of the semester. This allows us to change course if we need to in order to meet our objectives. It's a good little spot check along the way. It's also a great tool when you're having a day program for students, if you're doing pre-college outreach and they maybe have a number of sessions along the way, or you're holding a conference for your students and there's a number of breakout sessions along the way. This gives you feedback that they may not remember to give you at the very end of the day on a post survey. It allows you to capture that information right then and there when it's most relevant to the participants, and really when they have the most most information to share. And you'll see my fun meter on there as well, because really that does help you when you have a presenter to know, is this a presenter that I want to have come back or not? If everyone in the room said boring, then it may be time to provide some feedback to that presenter, reevaluate whether you would want to have him or her participate in your program again. So step 5 is to analyze and evaluate the data. This part takes time. There's no way to get around that, but it is absolutely critical to do in order to measure our effectiveness. We can't just collect all that data and let it sit. We've got to do something with it to be able to know whether we've had that impact. On here you see a repeat of the slide that I showed earlier with the objectives. And what I typically do with our objectives for our programs is go through and say, one by one, did we meet it, did we not? Green means yes, go, we did it. Red means we didn't meet it, we might need to change something. The gray highlighted out things are items that we can't measure just yet. So the data that you see up here is from our FIG program from this past most recent year that we've just completed. So on our evaluations, we found that 90% of our students were registered with our Engineering Career Assistance Center this last year. We wanted all 100. We only got 90. So are we upset about that? Are there major things that we're going to change within our program because of that? Probably not. We're still happy with the 90, but we do want 100. So we won't necessarily change that objective next year. Same goes for that bottom one there. We want 95% of them to be confident that they're going to complete an engineering degree. That's a pretty high number given the normal retention rate for students. Do we want 95%? Absolutely. Are we upset with 91? Not necessarily. That's still very, very high compared to what we would get if we sampled the entire engineering population. So it's a place that we want to work on, absolutely. We'd love to have 100% want to continue, but it's probably not realistic. Here's a showing of the longitudinal data that we collect, and this is just a snippet of this crazy spreadsheet we've got going for our FIGs right now. And one of the things that we really do with our longitudinal data is try to look at it and then compare it to what's going on with the School of Engineering. So for example, the top right number there under the overall shows the second semester retention, which we track after every semester. So that would really equate to a one-year retention rate. So our one-year average retention rate for our FIGs, since we've been doing them, since we started in 2002, is 93%. We compare that to our school average over the same time period a 74%, and we can see that our FIGs are extremely successful. We're running about 20% higher on our retention rate than the overall School of Engineering. So our FIG program is absolutely core to the things that we do within our Women in Engineering program, because we know we are impacting retention of those students. And then our last step number 6, is to do something with these results. I talked about the justification piece, and this is an example of justifying our program to funders or administrators. The FIG data I will take and I will put it into some sort of table, some sort of annual report presentation that I will provide out to our funders and administration. And I don't tell them everything. I don't grab every bit of data because it's not all necessarily relevant to them. However, I do pull out the key parts that I want to share. And if one of the pieces of data isn't so great, I might happen to just leave that off. For example, you'll see on the rock and pipettes, that second row in my table there, I don't list the GPA. Their GPA wasn't as high as the All About Mechanical Engineering FIG, which was a 3.0. So I just left the GPA off. If they ask me, I'll share, but I didn't figure I needed to stick it out there when it perhaps was below a 2.0. However, taking that data and knowing that our rock and pipettes, which is our chemical engineering FIG, that their GPA was below a 3.0, made us change this past year and include in our seminar more study days. And we brought in tutors on the days where they had tests so that we could try to help them on that GPA piece, because we know that is important for students, especially when they're heading out to get a job. So, how are you feeling? Here's another poll. Are you feeling excited about assessment? A little overwhelmed? Maybe not very enthused, but you know you've got to do it, so tell me how to start? Or, oh my goodness, I'm so overworked, I'd let somebody else handle it. How are you feeling about assessment at this point? I'd like to know. It is a lot. It has taken my program, I've been in this role 6 years. It's taken us 6 years, and we're still changing, adding, expanding, modifying continually. We did not get to this point in year 1 or month 1, even in year 2. It has been a process. So let us know how you feel at this point about assessment. Got a few more seconds, and we'll see how everybody's feeling. And I bet whatever you check, there's somebody else that checked that one as well. And I do have to tell you, once you get into it, it gets pretty exciting. But that also could just be the engineer in me loving the data. Okay, time's up. So Greg is posting our results. Okay, good. Well, for those of you that are overworked, I feel for you. I am there as well. And for those of you that are on the other end on excited, that's great. I hope we can keep your excitement level high. And assessment's tough, but it's very rewarding when you can truly measure the impact on these students and see, my goodness, they did learn that. We did accomplish what we wanted to accomplish, and they had fun along the way. Okay, well, here's another poll for you. Can we help you feel better? So this is a very broad overview training of what the AWE instruments are and assessment and how to use them. So let's get a feel for you perhaps of what could help you feel a little bit better as you head into assessment. Would you feel a lot better if you had more training on the actual survey instruments? I just gave you some snippets of them and told you here's where the website is. Would it help if you had some more information on how to customize them and use them? Or do you feel pretty good about the information you had? Maybe you have some more questions on how to use them and how to customize them, but you're feeling pretty good. Or you don't think any more training is going to help you right now. You're right where you need to be, whether that be you have the skills and you have the tools already available and are doing it, or you're just not there yet and not ready to move into all of the assessment just yet. So share with us how we can perhaps help you feel better. Okay. All right. Great. Well, we're kind of all over the place on that one. Well, that's good. That's kind of what I expected to see. Well, let me wrap up with a couple more slides here on the insights that I've learned and some final words of wisdom as you move forward with your assessment. First of all, as I mentioned, assessment really is a process. It's not a one-time event. It is not meant to be something where you throw in that post-survey, you collect it from the students, and you're done. It really needs to be a process from start to finish within your programs. And it takes time. Building that culture of assessment is definitely worth it in the end if you can really build that into the expectations of your participants, of your stakeholders, of your staff. It makes a huge difference. It really gets people looking at what are we doing, evaluating continually, are we doing the best that we can, and putting our resources where we need to be, and how can we do things better and more effectively. It really is easiest if you include it in your planning cycle, if you think about it from the beginning, from when you're starting to plan a program, or when you're kicking off your year and getting ready to figure out what you're going to be doing. It's much easier to accomplish if you include it in your planning process. And there are good assessments out there. We really don't need to start from scratch. There are good tools out there like the AWE ones that I've shared with you and others, and definitely feel free to use those. They are available. We do not have to start everything from the beginning. So my words of wisdom. Start small, start focused in your assessment. Don't try to measure everything. I'm to the point now after 6 years where we do measure everything. Every initiative has program objectives and goals and measures and a process in place to do that. But the first year we said, okay, within pre-college initiatives, we're going to start with this one. And in current student programs, we're going to start with this one. And we've expanded and built upon that year after year. One of the key things is to think about the use of the results first. If you know that you have a huge funder that's focused on one type of initiative, that may be a good place to start. Or if you're looking at starting a brand new program, as I mentioned, it's easiest to start through the planning process, so that may be your easiest place to start, is something that's brand new. Once again, don't reinvent the wheel. Use AWE products, use others' assessments and modify them if they are using valid and tested instruments. And bottom line, keep at it. It will eventually become a part of your program's culture. It will make a difference in what you do, and it doesn't have to be painful. There's a lot of resources and help out there for you, and the AWE products, I think, will be of great use to you as you move forward. So once again, all of the AWE products are online at aweonline.org. You can also always feel free to reach out to me or to the AWE project personnel. Dana Husko and Barbara Bogue are both at Penn State, and Rose Mara is at Missouri. Any or all of us are happy to answer your questions and to help guide you through the online tools. And we will be at the SWE National Conference, so if you're heading to the Society of Women Engineers National Conference this fall, we'll be doing another workshop training there, so I encourage you to check that out. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you. Well, in response to the poll that we all took on whether or not we needed more help, we made the assumption that probably learning more about the AWE tools would be really a useful thing. So we want you to know that the next webinar is scheduled on Monday, June 16th, and Tricia will be conducting this webinar specifically on how to use the tools that are on the Assessing Women and Men in Engineering website for your program, so it'll be kind of a hands-on process. So we hope that those of you who said, I need more help, I want to learn more, in the polling section for that last question that we had, that you'll join us. And those of you who think that you've heard too much already, maybe you'll think differently by the 16th of June and join us as well, or share with others some of the things that they might be able to learn in this next webinar. Well, I think it's time that we'll go ahead and answer some questions. And Greg, if it's okay with you, I'll just go ahead and start with the questions that we have in the Q&A section of the WebEx page.
Sure, yeah, you should be able to see them as I. So yeah, go ahead and address those.
Okay. And Tricia, you can probably see them too. So let's start with the first one from Lisa Purvis. It says, are the AWE tools only specifically for student programs?
They are. They are for pre-college student programs and undergraduate student programs as of right now. Rose, Mara, and Barbara Bogue are always looking for feedback and ideas of where to take on next. So if you have other target audiences that you're interested in, definitely email one of them and let them know that. But right now it's pre-college students as well as undergraduate students.
And Allison Pedersen asked, I'm a National SWE Outreach Chair, Tricia, you probably know her, and have been working on a proposal on how I see SWE members using the AWE tools. What are your thoughts on this?
Given SWE's outreach, the pre-college tools are readily available. It'll just be a matter of training those sections on how to use them and why it's important to use them. And I know that this is a big area for SWE right now, having joined on with AWE to further develop these pre-college tools. But I really think one of the things that SWE will find the benefit in is being able to hopefully collect the data from a student section doing a pre-college outreach program in Texas and compare that to a SWE student section's pre-college program in California and say, you know what, this one is working very effectively based on this assessment, and yours maybe not so much in this area. Maybe you compare notes, or it allows SWE to really look across all of their sections and determine those best practices and help their sections better effectively provide that outreach.
I'm going to skip to Donna Davies' question for a minute. It says, what about qualitative assessment in addition to the Likert scale validated surveys? Excuse me, the 90% FIG registration at the Career Center result is impressive, but is there a story or important things to discover from the 10% that aren't? Why or why not?
Yes, there is, and that is just a time factor. Within my program, there's 4 of us and limited time. Each one of us has our little portion of the pie that we focus on. So absolutely, the qualitative assessment is key. It's just much more difficult to analyze that. We ask a lot of questions, open-ended questions on our surveys as well. And do we do any sort of rigorous evaluation of those? No, I don't have the skills to do that. I'm not trained in that. But I do skim through them to see if there's any commonalities that are coming up and things that we need to be aware of, or any feedback that we can provide back to a presenter, to our Career Center, or anybody that may help them improve their processes. So yes, I think it's important. Do we do it a little bit? Do we truly evaluate it and have statistics on it? No, we just don't have the time nor the expertise at this point to do that.
Going back to Freda Walker's question, she asked, can you share how secondary programs could use the tools you shared? And this may be a terminology thing. You use the term pre-college, and in my mind, when you're using that term, I assume what you mean these are programs that might be based in high schools or middle schools, and that the tools are really adapted for their use as well.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's mostly middle school and high school. We have some instruments, I'm not sure if they're up there on the AWE site right now. AWE is actually revamping their website, and they'll be switching over to include the SWE information here any time. But we have some for the younger grades. The problem there is that sometimes there's a reading challenge, so you have to use more pictures on your surveys than words.
Right.
But yeah, absolutely they can be used middle school and high school. That's the pre-college piece.
Okay. Mary Phelps asked, when will the AWE ADAPT tool be available for data collection, et cetera?
Oh,
I was going to say, did you talk much about that?
I didn't on purpose. That's a good question. ADAPT is a database tool. It's fabulous in theory. It just hasn't come out in practice yet. It's been in beta testing, and to be honest, I don't know when that's coming out. I didn't ask that question of Rose or Barbara before this call. I don't know.
So maybe in the June call, you might be able to report a little bit more about what the status of that is.
Yes,
on June
absolutely.
16th. Great. So Mary, join us on June 16th, and you'll get more information then. Let's see. How about, oh, SWE, Leslie, Buzz, I know that's you. SWE stands for the Society of Women Engineers. We are acronym heavy, as always, so we have to be careful about when we use those. But Society of Women Engineers, great resource. If you haven't been to their website, go take a look. They produce a lot of good materials. How about, let's do Jean's question. In the session at SWE conference, will the session provide pre-college program effectiveness?
To be honest, I haven't seen the exact definition of what's going to happen in that workshop, but I would assume so. I would assume it'll be somewhat similar to what I presented today, with just a lot more detail and some actual time to work on some objectives and assessment pieces in the workshop itself. When I've done the workshops in the past, people have taken it whichever way they need to take it, from pre-college to current student. There's really not a whole lot of difference on how to do it. It's just a difference perhaps in the questions that you're asking. So yes, it'll be included, I'm sure.
Allison Pedersen wants to know, how much can we tailor the surveys? Do we need to run updates through AWE, or are they open to tailor as we want?
They are open to tailor as you want. And in fact, in the session that we'll do in June, I'll share with you some of our tools, and you'll see, I'll show you what the AW tool looks like, and then I'll show you what our tool looks like. And we started with the AW project right when I came into the Women in Engineering program in 2001. So right off the bat, we used their instruments in full. The questions just the way they were asked, as many questions as they had, we used. And we've learned over the years that there are some questions either don't really apply, or we're never going to do anything with this data, or maybe we just really don't care about that piece. So we've really tailored them quite a bit. And you can do that. That's what they're meant to do, is to take and to use. They will show you in the website, you'll see how to modify them so that the questions stay valid and tested. But, you know, sometimes I don't even worry about that if I know that I need to be asking this question to help me with this piece that I'm trying to measure. So, yeah, you can adapt them as much as you want. They love it if you share back, here's how I'm using your tool now, but that's not required by any means.
And Barb Ritters wants to know, are the surveys in a SurveyMonkey or other web-based survey tool?
Right now on the registrations, in that registration area of all, once you've registered, you can download them as Word documents. So they're not in SurveyMonkey, because that would require that every user has a SurveyMonkey license, and that you there's some way to keep all the data separate. So no, but I will tell you that one of the things that I've done with our program, all of our pre-surveys, our registration surveys, are all online. We have an online survey instrument within our school, and we use that. Others use SurveyMonkey or whatever tool they want, but we just take those questions, pluck them into whatever survey tool we've got online, and use them that way. But they do come just as a Word document, so you can modify them and download them.
Great. Mary Phelps asks, do elementary and secondary school systems have any requirements or metrics with regards to STEM equity? And I'm going to answer that one. Basically, in elementary school, the only accountability requirements that elementary schools are being held to have to do with those in relationship to No Child Left Behind. And of course, in that regard, it's really about student performance in math and science. There's reporting requirements in NCLB regarding gender and race ethnicity and some special population groups for the purposes of school report cards, and also for looking at gap closing analysis for AYP, adequate, I'll probably get this wrong. It's adequate yearly progress, if I recall. So in that case, that is affected in elementary and secondary schools. The other place where there are some metrics regarding equity per se in relationship to STEM is in Perkins legislation, of course, and the requirement for every local educational agency and community college that receives funds under Perkins are required to track the percentage of underrepresented gender students who participate in non-traditional career and technical education programs and complete those programs. There are two measures. The data is reported in aggregate, but depending on the sophistication of the state's data system, it's possible to analyze that data by cluster, career cluster, because often they're reported that way, or also by program level. So you could have that information. The local educational agency, however, is only required, per se, to report the aggregate data for their programs in their school and to show increases in that performance, participation, and completion of students in non-traditional CTE programs over time. And in this case, STEM is a non-traditional program for women. And so that would be the measurement that they would be looking at. And Mary, if you have any other additional questions and want to know more about this, I'd be more than happy to chat with you sort of as a sidebar, but I think that kind of gets to some of it. Well, we only have 1 minute left, and so I think at this point, Tricia, are you willing to answer a couple more questions?
Yeah, I can try to do them super fast.
Okay. So
go ahead.
I'll read this one from Donna Davies. Are there resources tailored to women of specific groups and any additional needs? For example, reentry women, women of color, women with disabilities. Do the tools help with scholarly research on differences, if any, in these groups' experiences or status?
And I would say that's a fantastic question to talk with Rose Mara about. Rose is our assessment expert on AWE. I will say that the tools that are available have been tested and validated with a broad variety of people from a number of demographics. In fact, we went back and oversampled again to make sure we had enough minority population within our testing. So the tools have been tested on everybody. Do they target specific groups, or do we have questions or surveys that target specific groups? No, there aren't. But that would be a great conversation to have with Rose. She's really the expert and would be able to best answer that question.
Tricia, can you address human subjects approval for the AWE instruments?
Yes, and on the AWE website, there is a whole section on how to work with your institutional review board if you're at a university or college. And it's different at every school, so I'm not going to go into that, but definitely if you are doing surveys and assessing your students on a university campus in particular, you need to check with your institutional review board to see if you need to go through any sort of approval process. I will say on our UT Austin campus, they don't know what to do with me given my assessments. So I have an annual conversation with them, and they kind of send me away because they're not quite sure what to do with me. That's different at other universities. They make them go through the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, for everything. So check with your institution.
And the last question we'll take is the one regarding whether or not you've been working at all with the Girl Scout Councils. And I know that the Girl Scout Council, for example, serves on the National Advisory Board for the National Girls Collaborative Project, as NAEP does. Yes. And so I suspect through that work you've probably been working with them.
Yes, and I would say it's through those other collaborations, not directly. AWE is partnering with the National Girls Collaborative Project, which gets us the connection to the Girl Scouts. I know here locally, I share every time I get with anybody, Girl Scouts, other informal learning organizations, museums, whoever, about the AWE project. So yes, the Girl Scouts are aware of it. How widespread are they aware of it? You know, that's like any organization. I don't know. Definitely the Girl Scouts are hopefully getting hit through the National Girls Collaborative outreach.
Well, I want to repeat Donna Davies' last question, which is not a question but a comment, and to thank you very much, Tricia, for spending this hour with us and sharing with us this exceptionally valuable information. It was really excellent. I agree with Donna completely. And I'm particularly looking forward to are doing this again and learning more specifically about the tools. And let me just remind everyone again that we'll be doing our next webinar on Monday, June 16th. It'll be 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Mountain Time, noon Central Time, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, depending on where you are. And please take a look. The announcement will come out on the listserv, which you will receive as your result of your participation in this webinar if you weren't on it previously. And the announcement will also be on the STEMequitypipeline.org. Be sure to register early so that you get all the information you need and will be prepared to join us on Monday, June 16th. And again, Greg Nagy at Ohio State, thank you for being our technical advisor today, and Tricia for your great and wealthy knowledge. Thank you, everyone. Okay, I'd just like to end with thank you for joining us today. Remember that this webinar will be available on the STEMequitypipeline.org website. It will be under the Professional Development heading and then under Archive Webinars by the end of this week. When you close your WebEx program, a few survey questions will open in your web browser that we would like for you to answer for us. Thank you.